All right, Crestview, welcome back to another episode of Crestview Leads, where I, Tim Bolduc, get an opportunity to sit down and chat with people in my life that have had some influence on me in the area of leadership. And I'm excited to announce this is our 30th episode. So this is going to be the final episode for this season. We'll pick back up after the first of the year. And so I thought to do that, I would bring in a good friend of mine, Coach Brannon Remaklus. Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, I figured if I was going to we were going to end the season. I wanted to end it strong. I wanted to end it strong with like a word of mouth specialist, somebody who's like an expert in the area of chaos.
Right.
So no, really, welcome. I'm so glad to have you on the show. We've been friends now for a little over a year. Got a chance to hang out a little bit, and so I'm excited about getting a chance to chat with you today. Some about leadership.
Me too, bro. This is gonna be fun.
You ready to roll?
Oh yeah.
All right. So before we get started, what I always like to do is let you tell us a little bit about yourself. So where are you from? How did you end up in Crestview? That kind of stuff. So, go ahead.
Mostly born and raised. Dad was Air Force, Eglin Air Force Base, Hurlburt Field, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I've been here since '83. We moved away from '90 to '95. But for the most part, local. I moved up to Crestview when I opened my gym because I saw an opportunity. There was only so many gyms at the time.
Right.
So I saw a market, and I moved up here in 2010 from Niceville. I've been here ever since.
So you grew up in Niceville then?
We started out there's apartments. They're now by pickleball courts on the way to Fort Walton.
Yep.
Near where like Mama Rosa's was on the corner.
Yeah, I know where you're talking.
And I guess it was nasty, so my mom was like, "Hey, we got to get out of here." I think we went to base housing, lived on Eglin for a while, then we lived in Shalimar for a bit behind the McDonald's.
So where'd you go to school? Fort Walton?
No, I went to Valpy Elementary because that's where my granny was. She was over on Edge Avenue.
Right.
So I went to Valpy for the first couple of years, then we moved to Scott, and I was at Scott Air Force Base until sixth grade, and then moved back here, Ruckle, Niceville, University of Florida.
All right, so let's talk about that. Went to the University of Florida, studied.
I was a micro major for the first 3 years, microbiology, cell science. Everybody else, thought I wanted to be a doctor.
Right. Why? So why not? See, like everybody else. So why not?
Without getting too deep down the rabbit hole, I think that the medical system is not structured to impact people the way I was looking to impact people. Of course, there are certain people that it works great for them.
Sure.
But it's exceptionally bureaucratic. It's very limited in its scope. It's very proximal cause oriented, so it's not lifestyle change. It's not. Right. It's just kind of like, hey, I'm having a heart attack.
Symptom.
Yeah, which is great. Don't be wrong, call them. But for me, that wasn't what I was looking for because I'm more of a people person. I'm looking for direct interaction, more control over what I do. So
right. So then you studied that for what portion of your tenure over there?
It was 3 years. Technically, I was a micro. I was only there for 2 years. Okay. So I was at OW. I went to OW for a couple of years, took some time off, then came back.
Okay. So you did your associate level stuff here?
Yeah, I did Bio 1 and 2, Chem 1 and 2, Orgo 1 and 2. Well, I did some of that at UF, Physics 1 and 2, all the stuff I had to do for the MCAT back then. And then last year I switched to Psych.
Right. So then you completed that, right? So your diploma says what, or what is it?
It's a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology.
Okay.
I worked as an RA for a guy named Brian Arwada, who's a behavioral specialist, and then I worked for a lady named Caroline Tucker, who's a counseling psychologist.
Right. So this is kind of cool, and that's is why I asked that question about, because I knew this a little bit about you from a previous conversation. Started out in the medical field, but then got a little bit disenfranchised with the ability. This is the way I always take it, and so correct me if I'm wrong, Coach. So what I took away was that you got a little bit disenfranchised with the idea of the process, right? The system, like getting into the medical field, it was more going to be just a part of a wheel that continues to churn and not necessarily create life change. That stops it, more symptom-based than source-based.
Sure. And two, I was, to be fair, I never made it into the medical field, so I never did any work.
Sure.
So part of it could have been some sort of youthful laziness as well, because that's a lot of work. You know what I mean? So, it's a combination of a multitude of things where it's like, where can I make an impact? It's the same reason I didn't do graduate work in psychology, is because I saw the field, not that I'm some high and mighty, I'm obviously not, but it was faulty for what I was looking to do, because you bring me a 5-year-old and they say, hey, my 5-year-old can't sit still for 8 hours. And it's like, yes. That's because they're 5, but they want a diagnosis, and then in order to bill insurance, you have to provide some sort of diagnostic criteria. And it's like, I'm not telling some 5-year-old something's wrong with them because you're 5, bro. Like, I grew up 4 years ago when I had my son, and I'm 41. So for me to take a 5-year-old and say, hey, you're not very grown up,
Yeah.
How about this? Call me in 30 years. And if you're still struggling, we can have a conversation about any sort of deficits.
Yeah, we're definitely going to circle back to that, because one of the things I like, when I brought you to speak to our lead class, one of the things I wanted you to talk to them about was like those events in our life that just kind of changed the priorities. And that for you, that was the birth of your kids, and we'll come back to that. But on that, I love, kind of chasing this because honestly, a lot of the time a lot of the people in Crestview know you as a guy who owns a gym, effective, great coach, got super strong stable over there at Atlas. Talk about some of the fighters over there, but then also clowns on Facebook, right?
Sure.
Right. And so I love the idea of spending some time talking about, what's behind all that. And so you got your diploma in psychology.
Yep.
That's what we said. And then decided to do what?
Well, I was at Osaka in Destin.
Nice.
Food's one night. Yeah, it was great. Me and my buddy John used to go there all the time. No, I was just there eating. And there was a lady named Jesus, and she owned, at the time, I don't know if she still does, the property that Ararang is in.
Yeah.
She owns that. And so I'm sitting there eating with John, and she comes up to me. This was probably September. I had just gotten back from UF, and I was getting ready to take the GRE. She says, don't you teach, at the time it was karate. And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, I have a building in Crestview. You should open a gym. There's not enough stuff for kids to do. And
I love that.
I came up, looked at the building. At the time, I don't know if you were here in 2010.
No.
This would have been 2009. It was pretty run down at the time. Yep. And that place you guys just cleared for parking, she said, oh, it's going to be parking. Well, that was 15 years ago.
Right.
It's now parking.
Right.
And oddly enough, I bought a building right next to it. But I looked at it and said, this isn't what I need, this building. But I took it as a, however cheesy, sign.
No, yeah.
Hey, you should probably do this thing. Somebody's telling you to do this thing.
Right.
And sure enough, here I am 15 years later, still doing the thing.
So you were teaching karate. Were you teaching it at someone else's gym?
Yeah, I taught for years at C.D. Williamson Karate down in Niceville.
Okay.
I taught for him for a long time. I started with him, teaching for him in 1999. And then I stopped technically when I opened my gym. Now, I was off and on because I was at UF, or I was here, I was this. But
right. So what were you doing? So is that what you were doing to pay the bills then, was teaching karate at the time? When you were in school?
Yeah, I was a bartender.
Okay.
I worked at restaurants.
Got it.
Out in Sandestin.
So were you working at Osaka's or eating at Osaka's?
No, I was just eating, stuffing my fat face.
Yeah. I'm hungry talking about Osaka. Yeah. I love Osaka.
It's good. We don't go as often as we used to.
No, we need one up here. So ended up going down for my daughter's birthday. We went down there and down that way and ate at one of those hibachi places. We need some more hibachi up here.
Yeah, we go to Bamboo quite a bit. It's great.
Yeah, it's good. Love it.
But when I was at that point, I was doing a whole lot of Osaka.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, I'm hungry. I think
I feel you.
Talking about this Osaka's. So anyway, so then you opened up your gym, opened up Atlas. Have you been in the same location the whole time? So you're south of I-10?
Yeah, at the time, 85 wasn't the nightmare it is now.
Right.
So where I was
I don't know what
functional.
you're talking about at all.
Right. I'm sure you've never heard anything about the traffic.
Yeah.
It used to be fairly clean right there, and there was nothing else. So like, Mr. Gordon's got his gym kind of in the middle of town, north-ish. There's an ATA school Mr. Palmer owns. And at the time, that was it. So I moved in Southside so that there'd be kind of some variance in location, and I took advantage of that Southside position. But it's become less of an asset lately. But yeah, I've been there for 15 years. It's inside where the Aaron's building is.
Yep.
But having kids and all that kind of stuff has changed priorities. So I recently bought a building.
Yes.
Because I need long-term stability, and I'll probably buy some more buildings and do some other stuff. And
so you bought on Main Street.
Yep.
Right. That right as we sit here and speak now, it's in the process of being remodeled.
Yep.
So we getting close. What's our timeline there?
I'm hoping January 1st, but we'll see. Because I still gotta. I gotta order mats, and there's some other little things. And the biggest slowdown has been my decision-making process, because it's my first time ever doing this. I want to do it right the first time. Yeah. So every decision you make is.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to take the mats back out and redo this. And what we should have done. I'm just doing it, trying to get it all done right now.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting. And so let's trail off a little bit on that. So people always, one of the things that you end up in engagement on Facebook, I end up engagement on Facebook as it relates to the city is like, why doesn't the city open this store? Why don't we have more things for kids to do and all that? And I think a lot of times it's lost on, the ladies or men behind the counter that are just clicking off on their keyboard, what it actually takes to get it done. And so before, you were in a building that wasn't your building, but stepped out on a limb, opened your business. You've been in business, you said 15 years?
Yeah, 15 years.
About 15 years. Ish. So successful small business, 15 years, crushing it. And then decide to go major investment, take the next step. Talk a little bit about that. Like how tough is that? Is it?
Man, I don't know that it's tough. There are facets of it that are difficult, but I've been doing it so long that now it's not. I don't want to say it's not tough. It's tough. You know what I mean? You and I've had conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
It's death by 1,000 decisions.
That's
it.
It
makes it tough. But like, I got a text one day from Jason Miller. He's at the Property Group. Because he had been kind of looking for me for a while, and he said, "Hey, check this out."
Yeah, we had Jason on here actually.
Oh, okay.
He was
on
the
I
podcast.
saw it. And then 2 days later, or 2 days later, I had it under contract. 2-3 days later, because I had him and another buddy of mine, Cosmo Riccardi. He's a podiatrist up here. He's kind of been helping me as well, and they were like, "Hey, put it under contract."
Yeah.
And so I did, and
here you are.
I don't know. It was a scary decision, but it was, like I said, now that I have kids and a family to take care of, I just don't care if it's hard, if that makes sense, because it's just like, well, it's time to be an adult at the age of 497 or however old I am now. That it took me to grow up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah, let's talk about that for just a little bit. So one of the things I said was, one of the things that fascinated me about the first time we met, we went and had lunch at Bamboo. Speaking about food again, but we had lunch, I think it was at Bamboo. And one of the things that was interesting to me is you had talked about at that time you'd been in business 14 years or something like that. And you had said how much your life changed when you had kids. This podcast is a lot about leadership. It's really, I bring people on here that have had influence in my life in the area of leadership. And what I want to do is use this as an opportunity or as a venue to kind of share some of the things that we face as leaders, how decisions are made, the things that impact and change our lives, why we do the things that we do. And so one of the things I liked about my conversation with you is that you were, early on, you were successful. You've been successful at the gym the whole time. You probably wouldn't say that, but I'll say that you've been successful at the gym the whole time you've been there. No real worries, no real concerns, trucking through life, doing your thing. And then all of a sudden you start to have kids and it changes the way you think about the gym. So talk about that just from how those things that happen in our lives kind of just change our overall trajectory.
Well, it changed how I viewed everything in the world, like literally everything. There's nothing that I don't view differently. I think that we're kind of sold a bill of sale these days that what you do kind of doesn't matter. The world's a terrible place. Why would you bring kids into the world? Blah, blah, blah. It's just all this cynical nonsense.
Yeah. It's so much easier.
And then you have kids and you're like, oh, wait, those people are morons. I mean, absolute morons. I should have done this 25 years ago. Like, what was I doing? You know what I mean? I could have 7 of them now because they're just so cool. Like, oh, but you don't get to sleep.
Yours are pretty cool.
Well, they've got a very good mother, so that helps quite a bit.
That is true.
It's like, Dad, you want to put a puzzle together? Like, hell yeah, let's put a puzzle together.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's boring, but people talk about the hard things. Like, well, you're not going to sleep. You're not going to this. You're not going to that. You're going to have less money. You're going to have shut up. Like, that's all I have to say is shut up.
So I've been at this gig for about 25 years with kids, and now I got a grandkid, and I will tell you, I don't remember the not sleeping part. And so for when my youngest was young, I had a full-time job. I was a full-time plus student in college, and I owned a private cleaning company in order to try to pay for college. And so I would work. I'd get up, I always get up 4-ish in the morning. I'd get up at 4 in the morning, do my thing, go to work all day, come home, maybe clean condos that evening, get the kids, do the thing, put them to bed, and then do homework. But I don't, when I look back on that time, I don't remember that being the struggle as much as I remember hanging out with the kids and teaching my daughter how to ride a bike and all of those things. I guess what I'm saying is that we can look at it from that perspective. It's so much easier to be negative, right? To look at it and go, oh, it's going to be so hard. But the reality of it is the benefit is so much better.
Well, something people don't realize, the selfish stuff disappears the fastest. And what I mean by that,
ooh, that's good.
Dudes who train at my gym, you come in, practice sucks. It's like, hey, bro, we're going to run gauntlets. It's going to be 3 minute rounds. It's going to be horrific. You got to fight this guy. You got to fight this guy. Then we're going to do all this conditioning and this, and they're like, oh my God, this is going to be. And then when you're done, you forget. Yeah. Immediately after the fight. So Matt had a fight recently. Had a fight. He won. Did great. Yeah. And then afterwards, you forget immediately all the work that went into it, all the stress that was so you can either worry about it and then not do the thing, or you can just do the thing.
Yeah.
You know, like have the kids do the thing. Oh, but we don't have enough money, but just shut up.
Yeah.
There are like people living in dirt huts all over the world spitting out kids like it's going out of style. And
Right.
they have no problems. It's
Right.
You don't think you have enough money for all of your kids to have iPhones at the age of 3, and you need to have this brand new car, and you got to have this big house, and you got to have these nice decorations. You got to go to Hobby Lobby. We got to just stop.
Yeah,
you don't need any of that stuff.
Yeah, some of that I would completely agree with. This idea that we don't have enough. It's that we don't have enough to do what is of lasting benefit, which is raising them, because we don't want to give up the things that we want to do, which is $7.
My wife and I have this conversation, and we say it that people with 4 kids look at us, and people with 6 kids look at them. We look at people that have 1 kid, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not a criticism, but I can see the mindset where they haven't. And me too, 2 kids, 3 kids, whatever. It gets worse and worse. The more kids you have, the less of yourself becomes important. Like I can see it. I've got 2 kids. I'm less
telling
important.
You, man, wait till you have a grandkid.
Than my friends that have 1 kid. I can just see they're still hanging on to a particular life.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it. I'm not criticizing, but you can just see you lose yourself, and it's a kind of a cool losing myself. Like if I was younger, we 100% would have at least 4.
Yeah,
because they're just so cool.
They're fun. We'll see. We'll check back when they hit teenage years.
I'm worried about teenage years because that's going to be a tough.
It's a little different game.
You're competing with an entire world at that point. It's not just you as a parent. It's you as a parent and the entire universe. So I'm trying to develop strong enough connections now, enough physical affection, enough verbal affection, where we spend the time that when they reach that point of pushback, the pushback isn't catastrophic. Yeah. I don't want catastrophic pushback. And so hopefully they love me enough and I love them enough that even when they're like, hey, Dad, you can, it doesn't get ridiculous. Yeah. Just a little, come on, Dad, just one of them. You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But we'll see.
It's a lot more fun when you can embarrass them, too. You got to get to the age where you can embarrass them. That part's great.
Right.
So talked a little bit about making the decision to go into business. Let's talk about like from a leadership perspective. So you coach. Tell us a little bit about that. So you're an MMA coach.
Sure. Yeah, I coach professional fighters, amateur fighters, kids, adults, whatever. We've got MMA, jiu-jitsu. So we do the striking, the groundwork, the the wrestling, wall work, whatever it is. We do a little bit of all of it. And
why would somebody come to you to coach? Like, what is it that says, "Hey, I'm going to go to Atlas"? And
well, that's a loaded question because the consumer, as a general rule, has an idea of what they want, but they don't really know what they want. And when I say that, it's the same with me. Mm-hmm. You've seen this process of me getting this building, right? And people are like, well, I think I know what I want. And then I talk to somebody and it's like, oh, you don't know anything, And so why would people come to us? That's a loaded question. Of course, we feel like we're effective at what we are.
So what would you look for in the people that coach you?
Well, for me, I'm looking for high-level subject matter experts, so I'm not now, I'll tell you this. This will kind of buy into what you're talking about. My kid just started. Mm-hmm. What I want when my kid trains is I want to see him smile, and I want to see a coach that cares. Yeah, that's it. If my kid's having a good time, I don't care. Because like I used to think, because me, I'm coaching fighters, and I'm thinking the only thing that matters is how practical it is. Because there's varying levels of practicality in our world. Sure, there are people that coach things that, and I come from a karate world. We're doing a whole lot of dancing, and not a whole lot of fighting. So I did all these dances. Don't get me wrong, I love it. Kata, it's great. Yeah. Traditional, beautiful.
I don't know anything about it. But
I spent all that time doing it. So let's say you spend a whole lot of time wrestling around in your pajamas, doing some gi jiu-jitsu, or you're doing no-gi, or you're doing this, but nobody's punching you in your mouth. Me, I always thought that the highest level of practicality was what was most important, and now I'm starting to realize that it's the camaraderie, it's the workout. You know what I mean? Now, the practicality factors in. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so for me, training, the best part for me was getting to know different people, but also like the loss of, I lost a lot of weight. Sure. I lost 60 pounds. Of course, I've gained back about 22 of them now. But
exactly 22, not like just 20 or 25, 22. Wow.
I'm about 22. But so I'm still down 41, right? From when I started that. But then also just the confidence of understanding. What started with me, it's funny, I was at the gym with the police chief who you allowed to do some defensive tactics training there. And when we're working through it, and he has this kid. I got to be careful because he works for me, but he has this kid that I would have, been like, oh, I could whoop this guy on the street, right? And then that's who I was working out with, and I was just made the comment, like, I conceal carry, so I'll just pull the pistol if I ever have to. And so through the conversation, it was like, okay, well, now make sure he can't pull his pistol. And so I'm wrestling around with somebody I should probably be able to whoop, at least in my mind, but can't get to the pistol. And so it was very practical for me to go, ooh, maybe I need to understand a little bit better the physics and your leverage and things like that you learn, proximity and being able to feel them and that kind of stuff. So
the idea of violence is very different than the reality of violence. And that's what most dads that come in the gym, they don't understand. They come in and they train once, they get punched in the face once, and we're extremely controlled. So it's not like we're bringing it. Right. But if a dad, they're like, ooh, that's different. Or they get choked, or they try to wrestle around with little scrawny Josh.
So my first day, right, I show up, I'm 263, 264, something like that.
Large and in charge.
Josh is what, $109? He might
Josh,
weigh
I think, is 145.
Okay, so fine. He's 145.
He weighs what I did in sixth grade.
I'm twice his size almost.
Right.
And he chokes me out in like 45 seconds. And that's only because the first 35 seconds he was messing around with me. And so just the idea that, you're right. What did you call it? You said the idea of violence.
Oh, the idea of violence is very different from the reality of violence. And that's the same, like, we'll train with a guy who's a GB.
What's that?
Green Beret.
We got
a lot of 7th group guys, right? And so we start to think, oh, well, look, I'm choking him in a gi, or I'm beating him up in MMA, and you're thinking, right, and the next thing you know, you wake up at 3 a.m. with a dude standing over you with nods and a rifle in your face. And you're like, what? I thought we were talking about, escalating violence? Because I said there's levels of it, like, efficacy. And so it's really, really good to just maintain some sense of humility in the realm of violence. I mean, I coach violence, whatever that word means, professionally, but I have no mystery as to how.
So what I love, we were talking, I got you off subject, and I apologize for that, but you were talking about when you're looking at, so you were saying basically what you're looking for in a coach is different based on maybe the level.
Well, the who and the why. Who are we talking about? You know what I mean?
So you started by your son, right? And so your son, you want to make sure that your son smiles. So is he with Josh? Is that his coach?
He's been doing Josh's class, and he's been doing my class, but I was out because I was sick.
Yeah.
So he did, Miss Katrina coached him.
Yeah.
And, I'm looking for a little bit of practicality, but, making friends because we're homeschooling. So making some friends, having a good time in a class environment, some physical activity.
And then you go to a 47-year-old fat city manager. So what is he looking for in a coach?
Yeah, well, what I would want is a coach that has a strong sense of injury reduction. Because it's really easy. You get a kid like Josh. What's Josh, 26?
Yeah.
He's invincible. You know what I mean? So he thinks, well, let's all do this and do this and do this.
He doesn't even know who Gumby is because he's too young.
Right.
But you could literally tie that dude into a pretzel and he would just be fine.
You want somebody who knows how to take the older guys or take whoever, the beginners, and be like, hey, look, let's parameterize this training session. We're only doing this and this. Once you get to this point, stop to reduce injury. Make it intense enough that they feel like they got a good sweat, but not so hard that they can't train again the next day. And it's hard to find those balances because you can't really understand until you're older.
Yeah.
You get these young coaches, they have no idea.
Depends on what you're doing. So what are some characteristics that you look for just in general in a leader? It's a leadership podcast. So I want to wrap some of this into it and talk a little bit about that. So when you're thinking, because we've had some interesting conversations over the last couple of years about like, who do you want to surround yourself with, or who do I want to surround myself with, right?
Sure.
We always talk about not being the smartest person in the room, wanting to be able to have, conversations with people who can, you can add value to and they can add value.
Sure.
So what do you look for? How do you?
As I've gotten older, 100%, I'm looking at their personal life. It's like a lot of the high-level podcasters you look at, Lex Friedman, Andrew Huberman, these are single guys, no kids, in their late 40s, mid-40s. And so like the things they say, however terrible it makes me sound, I take them with a grain of salt because the picture of their life isn't. So like at my gym, Steve Burks, MMA coach, family man, 4 daughters, amazing father. Oscar, 4 kids, fourth one's on the way, amazing father. Daniel, amazing father. Like I want fathers who lead by example and take good care of their family. Even my highest level pro at the gym, Clay, he's a father, husband, firefighter.
Good dude.
So I'm looking for their personal life to be in order. You know what I mean? I don't want to see a bunch of...
It's interesting.
I don't want to see a hairy past.
So it's interesting that you say that because I looked at and I can't think of his name right now. It's not Jocko, but he's one of these guys that writes the book where he runs the marathons.
Talking about David Goggins?
Goggins.
Yep.
Right. So I'll listen to Goggins and my guys, my firefighters, my cops, I'm like, oh, did you read this Goggins book? And I mean, obviously he's brilliant and he's found a level of success in what he does. But to the same point that you're saying, what did he trade all that for?
Sure.
Right? Do you have a well-rounded, can you create a complete life? When I looked for, I'll say this, when I looked for the chief of police, I wanted a man or a woman. Didn't care which one, didn't care ethnicity, none of that stuff. But I wanted a man or a woman that could demonstrate to those officers that you can be in law enforcement for your career and that you can have a good, sound family at home.
Sure.
Right? And so if you've got these, I love that point, because there's these people who get successful but they're successful just solely for themselves.
Sure.
And there's nobody relying on them.
Well, that's where you have to be careful with envy in general. So like you look at Elon Musk and you say, man, I wish I had his life. And it's like, do you? 12 different kids, a bunch of different baby mamas. You're never going to raise your kids. You're under constant pressure, and people will say that and then get stressed out in the Starbucks line. Like, no, you're not ready for Elon Musk's life.
No. Trying to land a rocket. Yeah, no.
That's it. You take a guy like David Goggins. He functions as, when I explain this to friends, he functions as an archetypal hero, meaning like he is a particular personification taken to the extreme. And so you can use that meat and bone is what I call it. Chew up the meat, spit out the bone. With David Goggins, his personal life is the bone. And the meat is push yourself a little bit harder. So when you're at jiu-jitsu and you're thinking of sitting out a round, do that extra round. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah,
so
no doubt.
You use him to make you sit on the treadmill for 10 extra minutes. You don't use him to make you abandon your family.
Right.
Those are two different things.
Because that's what happens, right?
For sure.
I mean, that's what he traded for all that.
You can't have it all. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You can't send your kids to school for 8 hours a day and still have certain facets of a relationship with them, because you're trading off those hours. And I'm not saying don't send your kids to school. I'm just saying
I got you.
There's a trade-off for everything.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you weigh it? Right. We've had this conversation.
For sure.
So all right. So we're gonna end up winding down on time. I wanted to give you, because you're so Facebook famous, I wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to ask me any questions that you got. What are things you think people would want to know?
Oh, are you trying to keep it personal or are you trying to keep it professional?
I don't care. Whatever you want.
Man.
This is episode number 30, so you got to at least, we're gonna have to tease it so people will watch it all the way to the end. So what's good?
Why isn't this traffic fixed, bro? What's up with that? You got to do something about this traffic.
Yeah, I can hit that one.
I just got a tax bill. Why is my tax bill so high to be in this city? I think that hurts business, but I don't know enough about the subject matter. I would have to do comparative analysis.
All right, let's start with traffic.
Okay.
All right, so traffic is.
Now, I don't want to hear your excuses either.
I'm not giving you an excuse.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just trying to give you some.
Yeah, so traffic is a fun one. Traffic is kind of a chicken or the egg thing, right? So it takes, those two questions are actually tied together. So why is your tax bill so high? And then why is traffic so bad? Those things are tied together. So it takes volume in order to dilute the impact to the individual property owner, right? So you have to have enough businesses in order to sustain those things that because people live in the city, they want to have, right? Law enforcement, fire services, those kind of things, right? Potholes filled, that kind of stuff. The less people that pay taxes, the more it costs them individually. One of the big challenges Crestview has and had when I first got here was that the large majority of the city is exempt from taxes.
Remember, that's how we met?
Yeah.
The tax thing?
Yeah.
COVID?
Well, actually, we met because I wouldn't give you a grant.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Because you're like, no, you're not in a city, and like the city, it's the line's right there.
It across the street.
Yeah, it's right there.
The best part of that story is me going to my assistant, because I was like, this guy's annoying me, because you're pretty annoying when you want to be, and so he's like wearing me out, and I said, I'm gonna punch this guy in the face, and she said, no, you're not. No, you're not. I need to show you who this guy is, and so I decided against it. But anyways, yeah. So I mean, the two things are tied together, right? We can absolutely shut development down, but if we shut development down, there's certain things related to the base mission and the ability to house the military that we have to address, or we have to be willing to take the backside of that, right? There are some people who have what they have and they want what they've got, and they don't care about anybody else, and so they're just like, well, just shut the door. I'm here. I've got everything I want. Don't allow anybody else. And so that's a big part of it. The other thing is this is the short version, and this is what we're driving through on. To offset the traffic on 85, we've got the bypass coming in, but we also need parallel roads. We're not on a grid system. You got one option to get north and south, and that's 85. I've got to be able to develop the things that are to the east, and maybe even some to the west, in order to get those parallels to 85, so you can move traffic through town without being on that main road. Well, in order to do that, you have to move the properties that are currently owned and vacant in order to put the roads on them. That's how that works. And so that's part of that process. So it's a tough one, and it's not going to get fixed overnight, and it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Are you going to be around long enough to do any of that?
That's up to you guys. It's actually up to the 5 people that sit on the council as to whether or not I'll be here or not. As far as I'm concerned, yes. My goal is to stay here. There's some big things that I want to make sure that we get done. And so I don't have any interest. It's funny, people ask all the time, what's your next step? Where are you stepping to? I won't do this again. I have no interest in, I do the job of a city manager, but I'm not like a textbook city manager. It's not my kind of a thing I don't really like. Government's too slow. You know, a lot of the things that Elon hates without all the money and all the kids Elon has, I hate those same things. I hate the way regulation works. Right now, we are being shut down or slowed down by the DEP for permitting to expand the sewer system so that I can open stores. And, you know, the government is getting governmented. And so I just don't have the patience for it over the long run. I'll do this one until the council, three members on the council decide it's time for me to go, and then I'll go.
What are 3 things that your wife hates about you?
3 things my wife hates about me. First,
you got to make at least one of them good. Don't give me like, well, I leave my socks out.
Oh no, I know. I'll give you some good ones. I think anyway. So she hates the fact that I cannot go somewhere and just be there with her. It drives her crazy. Anytime we go anywhere, I always end up in conversations and brought off to the side. And so, you know, she does a great job with it. She's amazing. I couldn't do anything that I do without her, but that, you know, she doesn't care much for that at all. That's one thing. The second thing would be that I have an entrepreneurial mindset as well. So even though I work in government, I am never content with just the one thing that I'm doing. And so I fill my schedule way more, you know, that whole timeline I laid out earlier about starting at 4 and going to bed. I mean, that's the way it is right now. I'm just finishing, as of when the podcast will already be out. By the time the podcast is already out, I'll have a book in print. And so, cause it's going out, a week from tomorrow, but, you know, so all of that time, so the second thing is that I just every moment of my schedule is filled up. And the third thing is, I buy and sell old vehicles at a loss every single time. It drives her crazy. So I will buy junk, put it in the yard, and then fix it up and then sell it for less than I put in it because I'm dumb. So.
Because I'm dumb. That's a good.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Are those good 3?
Yeah, those are solid.
Yeah. All right. What about you? What's 3 things your wife can't stand about you?
That's interesting.
It shouldn't take that long.
Well, I'm hyper disorganized on a personal level.
Right.
So like when I come home, now don't get me wrong, I know exactly where I put it 4 years ago, but it was just like in a random corner in the floor.
That's hilarious.
And we get in huge fights over it. Because I'm like, hey, where's that one optic, that one thing from that gun, from this, that's in that little, and she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, bro, you lost it. So that's a huge thing. The other thing is, I think maybe other men struggle with this, but I'm a know-it-all.
What?
You know, in the home.
I would never have guessed that about you.
So that's tough. I will say this, like, as far as being a mom and good with the kids, oh my God.
Yeah, she's pretty good. One of the ones I left off, but my wife hates it when she thinks that I'm talking to her like I'm talking to somebody who works for me. I don't believe I ever do that. But she seems to think that quite a bit.
Right.
So that always causes problems.
Yeah, I cut her off too much. Like she'll start saying something, and I'll just
oh, that's bad.
That kind of
bad move.
I'm working on it. Yeah. We all have things.
Yeah, I'm 30 years in this now, so I've been doing this gig for 30 years. So she's got me pretty well trained. But
yeah.
All right. Well, listen, I always like to ask this question. It's been fun, but I always like to ask this question. Coming up, we all have people that have influence in our life, good, solid leaders. Sometimes it's bad leaders that have had influence in our life in one way or the other. And I always like to ask all the guests, if you could go if you, looking back over your life, if you were going to pick somebody out that had influence in your life and usually in a positive way, but you can use negative too, but a leader that had influence on you, tell me something about that person and what you either want to emulate or not emulate because of it.
Oh, wow.
You got any ideas? Who's had a lot of influence in Coach Mac's life?
That's hard to say because there's so many different people. I mean, C.D. Williamson, obviously, because I started teaching for him, and that's where I learned a passion for teaching. And he's very, very good at it. You know, I mean, he's getting up in age. He's only 60, late 60s, but he's still a stud. As far as just charismatic, knows how to run a room. I learned a lot of that from him. But I mean, leadership in what respect? In my gym, in my personal life? Because
whatever has the most influence on you.
Man.
So who like, what do you? Let's put it this way. So who's somebody that kind of shaped who Brennan is, and when you want to emulate their type of activities in order to shape others?
That's tough.
Yeah,
that's really tough because it's an amalgamation of so many different things.
Yeah.
I mean, we could say Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
His rise to prominence in 2016-17, I would say, is the reason I have a family now. So that's a
tease that out a little bit. Like, what do you mean?
There are gaps, I think, in theology, philosophy, and so many other things in the modern American context where people's beliefs are exceptionally shallow, and I think that's all of us.
Sure.
And I'm not saying mine aren't. So when I say people, it could include me.
I got you.
And him parsing out complex ideas and putting them into tangible form had a big impact on me. And then two, just the break from cynicism. Cynicism is something I despise at this point. I'm always making jokes in these groups, and a big part of it is because so many people feel that like a negative comment does anything at all. Ever. There's no negative comment. When I say that, 95% of negative comments do nothing but
in
hurt
that format. I would completely agree with you that 100% of the time in that format, a negative comment is not going to make a difference.
Yeah, and it's like a lazy teenage 12-year-old type thing. There's no if you have a solution, feel free to type that out. Say, oh, you should do this. We can do this. We can do this. Because of course, there's always things that need improvement, but there's no. It's so lazy to just, like I said, be cynical and just say,
Yeah.
And it's so teenage, and it's just it's exceptionally immature. But Peterson, I would say, this isn't something I would necessarily say publicly typically, but
this is pretty publicly
for sure. But finger quotes, I would say, brought me back to God.
Yeah.
And these would be finger quotes because that's a complex conversation. But my behaviors today are exceptionally different from my behaviors in 2017, and 2019, and 2020, and it's a constant improvement,
constant growth.
Because I just want to be a good father and good husband, and a good member of the community.
It's a bigger picture, right? So you have a better understanding of the bigger
people
picture.
don't realize how important they are. People have no idea how important they are. People think that like I can just say negative things and be negative and be this and it doesn't matter, but you have no idea. And it sounds cliche, but you have no idea how much you matter. You have no idea. Yeah. Even just little silly comments and memes can make a huge difference.
Some of my favorite movies are those movies so I like It's a Wonderful Life, which is, super cheesy. But what I love about the idea of It's a Wonderful Life is that people don't recognize. And a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is our job, the function of what we do every day is to provide us the opportunity to do the thing that's most important. And that thing is to make people's lives better.
Sure.
Help them reach their full potential, bring them into, the best that they can possibly be. And movies like that or the opportunity to gain that, that's why I love that movie, is because this guy gets this opportunity to extract himself from this universe and then see what the consequences of that are.
Sure.
Because so often we lost, not too long ago, we lost a young kid here in Crestview to suicide, and it's so heartbreaking because it's like people just don't see how much value they add or where they add value, and in the moment sometimes it gets easy to just go, I don't have any real influence.
Well, I think part of that is we don't tell each other enough. So
I agree.
Now I'm not going along with the modern either way how this is going to sound, but I'm constantly telling my friends, and my buddies will tell you this, they're probably too much, but I'm constantly telling them how much I appreciate them.
Yeah.
I'll just leave a voice. I'll leave a voice note and say, man, you did something today at practice. I just, I'm super proud of that. I'm like, or without you, the program wouldn't be this, or without you, I wouldn't be this. And when I say it's constantly, it's all the time. I'm sending my bros these notes just to let them know, because nobody ever tells me.
Yeah.
When I say that, I can't tell you how, and I'm not asking for it, but how rarely people will say that I've done anything for them. Intellectually, philosophically, personally. And we should be doing that, because it's easy to feel like you're doing nothing when you're not getting that feedback.
Somebody at least telling you. I was thinking the other day when you were saying that, I was thinking the other night I get a phone call from you in the middle of the night, and you're like, hey man, I'm thinking, I wonder what's going on. What does he need? And it was really just to go, hey, checking in, seeing what's going on. Hadn't talked to you in a while, just checking in on. I don't think we do that enough. And I think that the more, this becomes a thing, the where we get so hyper focused on social media and podcasts and all these kind of things that we lose that connectivity for sure. So let me do this. We're already over a little bit in time, but I want to wrap up with this. So this is our last episode. It's our 30th episode before we get into 2025. So at the end of 2025, what would you want to see going on or at large in the city of Crestview to consider that year having been a success?
That's a loaded question. For me, I'm going to try to make an impact as much as I can, if we're talking about just myself and my own little small footprint on Main Street, because being right on Main Street, there's huge opportunities for events and event participation and just making it more lively, because we could, you've been downtown Palafox, and then you got the
week,
Fox
actually.
theaters, there's just a lot as far as that goes. I don't know that I have plans for Crestview. It's more so I would like to be a more effective coach because the more time goes by, the more I see my shortcomings, and then run a better program at my gym, Very cool. And just bring a better quality product because there's just so much room for improvement all the time. That's the other thing with owning a business is all you ever see is everything that's going wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
It's hard. It is definitely hard. I always try to make a point, like if I go to a restaurant or something and somebody's halfway nice to me, to catch the manager.
For
and
sure.
Go, hey, I just want to let you know. Yeah.
Well, like Matt just won that 125-pound title. Matt Hefner, he's a local guy.
Yeah.
He won the
badge of the bone.
You look at him and you think, oh yeah, I could. No, you could not.
No.
He's a murderer.
He's one of those ones where
For sure.
violence is definitely easier up here.
Yes. But he won the belt, and it's funny. Like you have like a 2-second celebration.
Back to work.
And then, 30 seconds later, I'm like, all I can think about is everything I did wrong as a corner, everything we did wrong in the locker room, everything we should have prepped better, the communication we should have had. Why did he get caught with that hook? He shouldn't have got caught with that hook. Like, that's all. That's it. It's funny how.
You know, we left off the whole Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight conversation.
Are we discussing it?
We were going to try to work it in.
You're like obsessed with this time.
Well, I mean, we can put in another 5 minutes. What do you think? Fight just got over. What do you think?
I think that there was kind of a stipulation that I'll match intensity. And so at first Tyson was bringing some intensity, which I mean, he's 58, bro. He looked like $1 million.
Yeah.
First couple rounds to be 58 and move like that and do that. And it was perfect. But I think that round 3, Jake saw that Tyson was wobbly.
Yeah. And
he pulled back a little bit because he realized like there's no, let's say I just start to apply the pressure and I hurt this guy, I just look terrible.
Yeah.
So I think he read the room and understood this is about as far as it needs to go. And then he just kept the pace for the next however many rounds to let Mike Tyson have his time. Because you got to think, man, 58 years old, selling out that stadium, millions of people around the world watching, getting that payday. Like that's a huge achievement. And it's easy to boo-boo on it.
For sure.
And I get why people do it. It's definitely a spectacle. Fair enough. It was never an even match. You can't compete with youth matters.
Age wins.
Yeah,
age
for sure.
Wins.
Always.
Or age loses.
Yeah. I mean, it's Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah, that's right.
So I mean, it was interesting to watch the first couple rounds. It was good to see Mike Tyson take it seriously in training and everything else. But Jake Paul's a genius, that's for sure.
It's honestly, both of them, I think.
For sure.
Right? So you want to talk about, which everybody keeps talking about Trump and the reinvention of him, but honestly, the reinvention of Mike Tyson, right? So, I mean, goes to prison, comes out, bites off Holyfield's ear, and here he is at 68 or 58 years old, and we're watching him fight a 27-year-old. It's just, to me, that's so fascinating. Also inspiring, he pushed through because look, man, that's 11 years older than I am, and I can't even imagine, right? So I get a little bitty gallbladder surgery and don't go back to the gym, so I can't even imagine.
I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
It's super interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, and one of the things I like about what you said about Jake that I think is definitely relevant to this podcast is that I taught a class last week at Quint's Entrecon over there, and I talked about these 3 C's of a good leader, and and it was commitment, compassion, and courage. But in the courage component of it, what I was talking about is that I think that good leaders, great leaders, have the courage to only use the level of power or influence that's necessary.
For sure, minimum necessary force.
And appropriate at the time. Would you call it minimum necessary force?
Yeah, that's like a mantra. When you spar, when you do anything, minimum necessary force.
Like
if I apply an armbar, how hard should I apply it? Yeah, steal it.
Yeah.
How hard should I apply that armbar?
Yeah.
Minimum necessary force to get the tap.
And that's what we saw, right? So no need to humiliate. And that was, he's got a quote out, something along the lines of nobody wants to see Tyson knocked out. So. Yeah, it was so good, so good. Listen, man, I appreciate you coming by and hanging out with us.
Of course.
When we get off here, we'll go walk over and see how the gym's coming.
Cool.
All the work is going on there. But I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do in the community. I'm glad I didn't try to punch you in the face all those years ago. No, so thanks for coming in, hanging out with us. For those of you that watch it, again, this was our last episode for this year. We'll be back after the first of the year. I appreciate all those that have followed us, like it, share it, put comments underneath there about anything you'd like for us to talk about. We'll definitely bring Brandon back, and we'll have some more conversation later on. But thank you again for listening, and that's why Crestview leads.